Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and start service this morning. If you can, and and you're able to, would you be able to stand with me? And we'll go ahead and we'll start things off singing praises to our Heavenly Father.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Christ Church First Service. We are glad you are here. We hope that you are glad to be here. If you are not glad to be here, we hope to change that for you rather quickly, because we don't want you to be sour this morning. We want you to be happy. We want you to experience the joy of the Lord in your life. As you know, our theme for this year, and it is a powerful theme, it is the theme, Living the Dream. Living the Dream. The idea is living to love and loving to live. The more we learn to live a life of love, the more we learn to love our lives. Have any of you ever been disappointed with your life? You wish it would have went a little differently at times. A little bit. Me too. And so this message is for us this morning, isn't it? We're going to talk about the power of love this morning. Love is indeed powerful. We are looking at the restoration of Peter in John chapter 21, verse 15 through 22. I'll be reading from the New King James translation of Scripture if you would like to follow along. Beginning in verse 15. So when they had eaten breakfast, they, as Jesus and his disciples, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Feed my lambs." He said again to him a second time in verse 16, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me?" There is no more important question in life than this question here. Do you love Jesus? That's the question he's asking. "Simon, do you love me?" And he said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him a third time, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me?" Peter was grieved because he had said to him a third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know all things. You know everything." Really, Peter at this point appeals to the heart of the matter, doesn't he? You can look at me and you can know from my heart because you see my heart. Yes, you see my actions, but you also see my heart. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep." Most assuredly I say to you, when you were younger, you girded yourself and walked where you wished. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will gird you and carry you where you do not wish. You know, we kind of have a carefree spirit about us when we're young, don't we? Go where we want to go, when we want to go. We kind of feel like, this is kind of cool. Jesus says to Peter, there's going to come a day, and that's not going to be the case. There's going to come a day, and he stretches out his arms, and it signifies, as John is going to tell us here, by what death he is going to die to glorify the Lord. He goes on to say in this, when you're old, you'll stretch out your hands, and another will gird you and carry you where you do not wish. This he spoke, signifying by what death he would glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he said to him, follow me. Then Peter, turning around, saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following, who had also leaned on his breast at supper and said, Lord, who is the one who betrays you? Peter, seeing him, verse 21, said to Jesus, but Lord, what about this man? And Jesus said to him, if I will that he remain till I come, what is that to you? Follow me. Let's pray. Father God, today it is our desire to follow you. It is our desire to go where you lead and to only go where you want us to be. God, today we do love you. It may not always be seen in our actions in our lives, for truly we are like Peter, we fail you at times. But God, we are so thankful that you use those who fail you, that you still incorporate us in ministry, and you still empower us so that we might bring glory to you. God, today, I just pray that you help us as we look at the way Jesus restores Peter, that we will understand how you restore us back to fellowship with you. Lord, we want to please you in all we say and do. But God, we understand we can't do that by our own means or by our own power. And so God, today we're asking that you would fill us with your Holy Spirit, that you would lead us in paths of righteousness for your name's sake, so that we might bring glory and honor to you. God, thank you for everyone who's here today. God, I speak blessings over them in the name of Jesus, and I pray, God, for your Spirit to show up and shine. Change us today, God, into the image of Jesus, so that we might bring glory to you. We love you, Lord. We thank you in advance for answering this prayer, for we pray it in the name that is above all names, the name of Jesus our Lord. And let the church say,
We're going to sing How Deep the Father's Love for Us to prepare our hearts and our minds for the partaking of communion this morning.
Good morning. Came into church this morning with my notes, and sometimes I kind of live on the edge in what I say, and also my deeds. Sometimes it gets me in trouble. Came in with my notes, and it was getting time for church to start, and I couldn't find my notes. So I ran out to the car. I ran all over the church. I thought Ron was playing a trick on me. And I happened to go to the back, and there they were in the trash. So I don't know if it's God telling me I'm not supposed to say what I have on this paper or not. But here it goes. You know, I've noticed a lot recently, people are starting to write their own obituaries. Maybe you've seen them in the local paper. Actually, I've noticed that the obituaries are longer than the front page article above the fold, right? There's nothing wrong with that. I don't mean to be offensive. I think it's great. You learn a lot about people. But the one recently said, and again, I hope it's the person's shot at humor. It says, I'm gone to heaven, I hope, or whatever it is, or wherever it is we go to when we go. It went on to say all of his life's personal accomplishments. And like all other obituaries, it ended in a period. We know that periods in our language, punctuation is, it's finished, it's done, capiche, right? There's no more. And I'm thinking, well, what did this individual do? A lot of great accomplishments, but what did the person do for humanity? And again, I'm not talking bad about anyone past or present. And again, my mind, where it goes. What did Thomas Crapper's obituary say? Anybody know who Thomas Crapper was? What is it, John? I know you would know. Yeah, he invented the toilet, right? That's why we have the slang, the crapper, right? This one simple thing that he did change humanity, right? We no longer have to use the outhouse. Amen. And I would have liked to have seen that in American Sign Language. I'm not sure what that looked like. Did she do it right? Maybe? Yeah? Is that what that? All right, now I know what that means. All right. But actually, for humanity, he did a lot. And then I think of my grandparents who lived their life, they lived a Christ-like life. Small, short obituary, but they followed the Great Commission. It's what we're supposed to do. It's not these lofty things for ourselves. It's not about names in books or on buildings. It's about the name in the book of life. Matthew 28, 18 through 20. The Great Commission is one of Jesus' last words to his disciples of what we're actually supposed to do in life. Then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of age. If we live our lives as Jesus commanded, our obituary would be very short because we know what we've done, right? It's in the Bible what we're supposed to do. And in the words of Uncle Cy Robertson, all we need really is he gone. And not a period, right? Because our life is not gone. As Christians, we know it's not done. It's a comma. In the comma, we just take a breath, right? And then we get the breath of eternity. Jesus died, he rose again to take away that comma or that period in our obituary. In its place, he put the comma so that we would have everlasting life. We celebrate that today in taking of communion. His death, his resurrection, and the grace that he pours out on all of us. Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we just thank you for our lives. We thank you for the successes, Lord, that we don't earn. It's our gifts and talents that you've given us, Lord. We just pray that at the end of our lives, Lord, that you are given the glory in everything we did from birth to death. And we thank you for coming to this earth, for living as man, dying as a criminal, and being resurrected into a king, full of grace and forgiveness for all of us who ask. Lord, again, we thank you for everything that you've done for us in our lives. We ask that you'll bless this communion this morning. In your heavenly name, amen. Time in our service, it would take up our tithes and offerings. We don't command you, we don't compel you to give today, but if the Lord puts it on your heart, you feel free to give. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I just thank you again for this day, to be able to worship in this house, Lord. And we know that the house doesn't just open its doors, Lord. We also pay bills. We just ask that you will multiply and that you will use this money, Lord, that it will go towards the church and fulfilling the Great Commission. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Good morning again, everyone. Go ahead and have a seat. Again, it is good to see everyone here at Christ Church First Service. We're glad you are here with us today. The title of this message is The Power of Love. Say that with me. The power of love. Love is a powerful thing. Men and women have done things motivated by love that has been exceptional and extraordinary. As a matter of fact, we know that those who have had a deep love of country have been willing to give their lives in sacrifice for our country. As a matter of fact, I'm very thankful for the men and women that we have who are out there right now protecting us, keeping the United States of America safe. Amen? And it is good that they are there. Those who love their country. Not only has there been a love of country that has motivated people, but for men, there's been the love of a woman. Now, we've went to war over many things. I would suggest to you probably none more than the love of a woman. There have been a lot of fights that have been fought over the love of a woman. I would also suggest to you that there's been a lot of fights fought over the love of food. Any of you ever get hangry? You know what that is, right? You're so hungry, you're angry. You get hangry. Any of you that type of person? You can tell sometimes with people it's getting to a certain hour and they're getting anxious. They're getting ready to go. It's time to eat. Their love of food is motivating them and moving them. Some of you love your cats and dogs. Some of you love cats and dogs so much that you will rescue them, nurse them, and take care of them. I had a fellow that I knew quite well that he didn't care a whole lot for people, but he sure did care for animals. I was amazed how much he loved animals and how much he would take care of those animals and that he would care for those animals, and he showed great love for them. Think about this for a moment. We raise Shelties. Any of you have cats and dogs? Anybody in this house here today have cats and dogs? Anybody know what I'm talking about? We raised Shelties, and we sold their pups. But let me tell you something. Those dogs chewed the legs off our tables, our chairs. They chewed up our clothes. Do you know what I'm talking about? And yet we put up with them, didn't we? Cared for them. We had a dog. I'm almost positive. I hope this is not a story I'm telling on someone else, but I feel like I remember this happened to us. But I'm getting to the point now where a lot of the lines are blurred. But I remember in my mind coming home. We had been gone for a while, and we left the dog, and we really weren't sure how that was going to work out, if you know what I mean. They can only go so long without going potty. They've got to go outside. Came in, and that dog had jumped up on the couch and pooped right in the center of the couch. Any of you ever experienced anything like that? Only my dog would do that. Only my dog, you get ready to leave, and as you're getting ready to leave, you're like, oh, I've got to let that dog out before I go. So you let the dog out, and he goes out and rolls in cat poop before you. Any of you ever experienced that? Well, what is it about us that we're that crazy that we would care for these type of animals? We love them, don't we? We genuinely do. I remember when our dog died, I cried like a baby. Just sobbed. Never thought it would affect me that way. Any of you cried at one of your pets dying? Never thought it would affect me like that. And yet it did. What we're talking about is the power of love. Love is powerful. Even a worldly type of love is powerful. If a worldly type of love is powerful, how much more powerful is the love of God? Huey Lewis. Any of you remember Huey Lewis? Huey Lewis and the News. This song really made popular, I think. Not only was it a good song, but it was also a song for Back to the Future. Remember? The power of love. Just want to share a few of those lyrics with you this morning. Some of you could even sing that song this morning. If we challenged you a little bit, I bet you could sing it. The power of love, Huey said, is a curious thing. It makes one man weep and another man sing. Change a hawk to a little white dove. More than a feeling, that's the power of love. It's tougher than diamonds and rich like cream, stronger and harder than a bad girl's dream. Make a bad one good, make a wrong one right. Power of love keeps you home at night. You don't need money, don't take fame, don't need no credit card to ride this train. It's strong and it's sudden and it's cruel sometimes, but it might just save your life. That's the power of love. Any of you remember this song? Am I the only one here that remembers? This is a song here for the ages. First time you feel it, it might make you sad. Next time you feel it, it might make you mad. But you'll be glad, oh, when you found the power that makes the world go round. What is that power? It's the power of love. Don't need no money. Don't take no fame. Don't need no credit card to ride this train. I'm getting ready to sing. It's strong and it's sudden and it's cruel sometimes, but it might just save your life. They say that all in love is fair. Oh yeah, but you don't care. But you know what to do when it gets a hold of you. And with a little help from above, you feel the power of love. Feel the power of love, yeah. And he goes on in the refrain. Any of you ever felt like that? Love ever get a hold of you in a certain way? See, I want to say something to you this morning. We get all caught up in the do's and don'ts of Christianity. But when you get to the crux of the matter, what really is important today is, do you love Jesus? Because if you love Jesus, that love will motivate you to do things you would never do apart from that love. More than that, in addition to that, if you don't love Jesus, any and every good thing you do will not matter if it is not done in love. 1 Corinthians 13. Isn't that amazing? So your love of Jesus matters, and that is the most important question today. Now, just because you love Jesus, does that mean you won't fail Jesus? There are times we fail Jesus even though we love Jesus. Amen. That happens. It happened to Peter. We'll talk about that today. We want to recap Peter's road to denial a bit here. See, placing our trust and confidence in ourselves instead of Jesus is always a dangerous position, and it will always lead to your failure. Let that sink in. The problem Peter had that led to his denial of Jesus, remember, he denies Jesus 3 times that he ever knew him. What led us there was Peter's great confidence in himself. Peter denied Jesus because Peter had more confidence in Peter than he had in Jesus. You might remember the statements of Peter in Mark chapter 14, where he says to Jesus, "Even if all are made to stumble, I will never stumble." He says, "I am willing to die with you I will not deny you. And I believe Peter meant that. I believe he thought that to be true until it actually happened. And he denied 3 times that he knew him. Well, what was Peter's problem? He had put confidence, foolish confidence, in his own flesh, in his own ability. The Apostle Paul said in chapter 3 of Philippians, have no confidence in the flesh. He said, though I also may have confidence in the flesh, if anyone else thinks he may have confidence in the flesh, he says, and I believe this is Ephesians, not Philippians, have no confidence in the flesh. Peter's problem was he put foolish confidence in his own flesh. Jesus told Peter, he said, Peter, you're not mindful of the things of God, but the things of men, the things of this world. Peter had a problem that led to his downfall. His focus and his attention were not on the things of God, but they were on the things of this world. Peter wasn't concerned about what God wanted to happen. He was concerned about what he wanted to happen. Remember, we said very clearly last week that Peter wanted the Christ, but he didn't want the cross of Christ that came with it. Many people want Jesus, but they don't want the cross that comes with Jesus. You might remember Jesus says, take up your cross and follow after me. Denying yourself. He says, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself. Take up his cross and follow me. To deny yourself means to disown yourself. It's not just giving up something. It's more than that. It's not just denying yourself chocolate. How many of you like chocolate? It's not just denying yourself Diet Dr. Pepper in my case. For some it might be Diet Mountain Dew. It isn't just denying yourself something. It's denying yourself. It's allowing someone else to run your life, to rule your life. See, we'll say, yeah, I like that Jesus thing, and I'll go to church every once in a while, but I'm not going to let him rule my life. That's too much to ask. But really, that is what Jesus asked, isn't it? See, it is the opposite of being independent, and it's being completely dependent upon God. It means to reject the worldly philosophy of self-indulgence, which says, everything is all about me. The worldly philosophy says the secret to life is fulfilling yourself, satisfying yourself, helping yourself, doing everything and anything you can for yourself. But Jesus bids us to reject that philosophy and to realize we must deny selfish ambition. If you want to be a follower, that is a disciple of Jesus, you must put aside selfish ambition. See, I believe satisfying self is the root of all evil. How we as Christians get sidetracked from being mindful of God's point of view is by focusing on our own wants and desires. That's when I get in trouble. Following Jesus is about doing His will and setting your desires aside. I have to say no to me to say yes to God. So let's set the stage a little bit here for what we're going to look at in this passage. We know that self-confidence led to Peter's downfall. But that's not the case right now. The case right now is Peter's doing something that he has done in the past. You might remember if you read the Gospel of Mark that Jesus sees them along the seashore. He sees Peter and Andrew and he says, "Come, follow me." And the scripture says they left all that they had and they followed Jesus. Then we find out a little later, though, in the Gospel of Luke, in Luke chapter 5, that Peter had went back to fishing. You might remember this story because Jesus kind of tools up there, shows up, and he says to Peter, "Hey, Peter, can I borrow your boat?" can I just sit in your boat? You just kind of launch it out there a little bit, and the crowds of people stood on the shore. Jesus got into the boat, and he preached to them in Peter's boat. And remember, he said to Peter, he said, after he got done preaching, he says, let's go fishing, Peter. Peter said, Lord, I fished all night. Caught nothing. Jesus said, yeah, I know. Let's go fishing. So he and Peter go out in the boat, and Jesus says, let down your net. Remember, and it was so filled with fish that they had to bring a second boat to get all the fish. Peter, seeing this, responds to it, Lord, depart from me, I am a sinful man. And Jesus says, don't worry. From now on, I'm going to make you a fisher of men. You're not just going to catch fish, Peter. You're going to catch people for me. You're going to become a fisher of men. Well, now we find out in John chapter 21, at the beginning of this chapter, that Peter has went back to fishing again. There he is. He's out there fishing again. And this time it's not by himself. He's taken with him the other disciples who are there. And guess what? They fished all night and they've caught no fish. Jesus comes along and he yells at them. He says, hey, fellas, what you doing out there? He says, let your net down on the other side. And they do, and it's filled with fish. And the disciple who loved Jesus says, it's the Lord. Peter puts on his garment, dives into the water, and swims to shore. And when he gets there, he finds Peter on the bank with a coal of fires. A coal fire there, and on those coals were fish. And he had bread. He had breakfast. If any of you ever had a smell that reminded you of something, smells have a tendency to do that, don't they? You can walk into a room and maybe smell the perfume that's in a room and go, ooh, that reminds me of someone that wears that perfume. Maybe you've walked into an old musky office and that smell. I remember my neighbor used to smoke a pipe. People don't smoke pipes much anymore, do they? But do you remember some of the pipe smells, some of the tobaccos, either a wild cherry or whatever, and you smell that and it'll take you right back to where you were. See, the last time Peter had smelled a fire like this, he kind of stood by that fire and warmed himself, hadn't he? And that was where he had denied that he knew Jesus 3 times. So all of a sudden now, Peter's kind of in deja vu, isn't he? Remember back when we caught no fish and then we got that great load of fish that the Lord gave us? Here's breakfast. Everything is coming back now. But see, Peter is a different man now. Peter's not sure whether Jesus will ever accept him. Peter needs to be restored back into a right relationship with Jesus. Peter was broken. He had failed the Lord, and it wasn't in a little way. All of them had failed Jesus, but he failed him in a big way. Remember, he said, if all others fail you, I will never fail you. Jesus shows up and life changes forever for Peter. Jesus shows up and rescues Peter. Here's our theme today. Restoration with Jesus is made possible because Jesus comes to us. He confronts us about our love for him and then commissions us into a life of love. Peter's path to restoration, and I would say our path to restoration when we fail, goes like this. First of all, we need to understand, how was Peter restored? He was restored because Jesus is pursuing Peter. Peter will never fix his own problems apart from Jesus. It takes Jesus coming to Peter to make that happen. I've said to you in the past, if you are expecting the weak to fix the problems, they will never. If you have problems with your children, parents, you need to go to your children. The stronger always go to the weaker to correct the problems. You say, well, Doug, how do you know that? I know that because that's what God does for us. While we were still yet sinners, Christ died for the ungodly. Well, I wasn't the one who did what was wrong, Doug. I understand that. Neither was God. Neither was Jesus. You have to view yourself to restore this as the one who is strong. And you go to the one who is weak. Jesus, thank God, Jesus comes to us to restore the situation and to make it right, to fix the problem that's there. God is always going after us to restore us. We see Jesus doing this time and time again in the Gospels. But God not only does this because He has to do this, because our relationship would never be restored apart from that, but He does it because it's His character and it's His nature to do that. It's who He is. Thank God it's who He is. Moses was all excited. He had asked God one day, he said, God, I'd like to see you. I want to see you. And God says to Moses, you can't look on my face. If you were to see me face to face, you would die. He says, but what I will do is I will hide you in the cleft of a rock, and I will pass before you. Could you imagine that night after God had told Moses that, He told him that he was going to get to see God? I'd have not slept a wink that night. I mean, man, that would have been, I couldn't have waited till the morning. And so Moses gets up and he goes before God, and God passes before him in Exodus 34, and it says, he proclaimed the name of the Lord to Moses there. It says, and the Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord God, merciful and gracious, long-suffering and abounding in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity. Are you hearing what he's saying? This is the nature of God. This is who He is. He proclaimed Himself to Moses. Thank God that our God is a forgiving God. Forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin. By no means clearing the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon their children and their children's children to the third and fourth generation. But His love to us to thousands of generations. Isn't it amazing? I mean, this is how God loves us. This is how God cares about us. He pursues us. So Jesus is pursuing Peter. That's how this restoration takes place. And second, and this will be our last point this morning, Jesus is appealing to Peter. He's appealing to Peter's love. Jesus always goes after us, but we must cooperate with Him. Jesus is appealing to Peter on the basis of His love. Remember what the Scripture says? Jesus, after their meal, says to Simon, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? He says, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He says, feed my lambs. He said to him a second time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? He says, yes, Lord, you know I love you. He says to him a third time, and Peter is hurt by this. Do you love me? And he says, Lord, you know all things. You know I love you. Do you love me is the question Jesus asked. He asked it 3 times. You know, I'm amazed by what the Scripture says, but I'm also amazed by what it doesn't say. Jesus could have said, have you learned your lesson, Peter? Jesus could have said, will you believe me from now on when I tell you something? Jesus could have said, do you promise never to do it again, Peter? I think of all my parent lines. How about you? Would you ever do that again? See, the truth of the matter is Peter's going to do it before the end of the event again. He's going to turn around and he's going to say, what about this guy? And Jesus is like, don't worry about that guy. You follow me. If I want him to live till I come back, what's that to you? Follow me. But what does Jesus say? He says, do you love me? And he asks him 3 times. See, love is a powerful motivation. When we love Jesus, we will follow Jesus. But it doesn't mean we won't fail him from time to time. You and I must remember it isn't if we fail, but when we fail Christ, what does he do to restore and forgive us? See, we must cooperate with this restoration process, but he does initiate. The Apostle Paul said in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 that the love we have for the Lord controls or constrains us. It's the love of God that motivates us. It causes us to serve the Lord with extreme dedication. It's our love for him. His love moves me. It causes me to be passionate for him. Someone asked the question once, well, how do you get all that passion for God? How do you come up with that? Well, I want to tell you something. You don't manufacture it. It isn't one of these things where you go, okay, now we're going to get everybody riled up. We'll stand them up, and we'll get them stomping. We'll get them doing this or that. That's how we'll get the passion going this morning, folks. That isn't how it works. If the love of God doesn't motivate you, you will not be motivated. It's the love of God that impassions us, that moves us. That's why when asked, what is the greatest command? Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your strength. That's why. Because if you love him like that, you'll live for him. It settles both issues in that. He says, love your neighbor as yourself. It settles the issue of obeying the commands of God and how we'll treat each other ethically and morally in life. Both are answered here. Love. What is the greatest of these? Love. Again and again in Scripture. When doing this, we satisfy all the requirements that God has for us in our life. First, we love God. And if we love God, we will obey his commands. However, we must hear all that Jesus asked of Peter. Jesus said, do you love me more than these? What are the these that Jesus is talking about? Is he talking about the fish? He looked down and said, do you love me more than these? Is he talking about the disciples? You said, if all others fail me, you will never. Do you love me more than these? Do you love me more than you love the disciples? Or do you love these guys more than you love me? See, he never tells us, does he? I think there's a reason. Because the question is this: do you love me more than these? You fill in the blank. See, these for me could be my children. Could be my things I own. Could be a lot of things, couldn't it? Do you love me more than these? He says, you know I love you, Lord. Now, there's a little play on love here. The word for love. Jesus uses the word agape. Peter uses the word phileo. The one word means the sacrificial love of God, agape. The other word means, I love you like my friend, my brother. Now, I know when you look at this, I want you to understand that God wants you to love him above and beyond anything else in life. Without any hesitation, I can tell you that. But I can also tell you that I think Jesus has another point that he's making. See, I would submit to you that Peter prior to the Garden of Gethsemane. When Jesus said, "Do you agape love me?" Peter would have said, "Absolutely. With everything that I am. If all others fail, I'll never fail." That's not the Peter we see now. I think the Peter we see now says, he doesn't even add these, does he? He says, "You know I love you." Jesus asked him again, "Do you love me?" He says, "You know." I don't think Peter felt he could love him with the agape. Peter's a broken man. He's wrestling with all of this. And Jesus is brutally merciful with him in this. Jesus changes it and says, "Do you phileo me? Do you love me as a brother, as a friend?" And notice every time Jesus accepts his love. Feed my sheep, tend my sheep. He doesn't reject any of it. And Peter says, "Lord, you know everything. You know everything." Please stand. He appeals to the heart, doesn't he? He says, "Jesus, you know my heart. My actions may not have shown it, but you know my heart. You know me. You know I love you." And he says, "Feed my sheep." Jesus does know that Peter loves him. But he also knows that Peter needs to be able to vocalize that and be restored again. Peter had denied him 3 times publicly. And now Peter gets to own him 3 times publicly that he loved him. Jesus restored him back. Okay, so where does that leave us today? How many of you have failed the Lord in times past? How many of you have struggled? See, I want you to know today that Jesus is seeking you. He loves you. He cares about you. He wants to restore you. And here's the question that he asks. The question that he asks is, do you love me? And so let me ask you this morning. Do you love Jesus? Because he loves you. If you love him today, I want to encourage you to come while we stand and sing together, because I want to talk to you about his great love that he has for you. However we can assist you this morning, won't you come as we stand and sing together?
Does anybody have any announcements? Any praises? All right. From Kim, pray for her friend Connie for health and that they find a liver donor soon for her. She also has a praise. Friend John is home finally from surgery and long rehab. So that's good to hear. And from John and Joanne Heckerman, as many of you probably heard, there was a very unfortunate loss of life was that Thursday? Wednesday? A young man had went off the road and had a friend helping him trying to get the vehicle back on, and somebody come along and hit and killed him and kept driving. Very horrible incident happened over by Fremont. Young man, his name is Tony Irvin. His family's from the Bloomdale area down in the Elmwood School District. So keep that family in your prayers, as well as the person who hit this young man, that they would come forward. Let's go to our Heavenly Father. Dear Lord, we just thank you for the many blessings that you've bestowed upon us. Lord, we just thank you for Kim's friend John, who's finally home. We just sing your praises because we know if it weren't from your healing hand that he would not be home. We ask that a liver donor is found for Kim's friend Connie. Lord, we just pray for the Heckerman family and the extended family and the Elmwood School District and all of those that are impacted by the loss of Tony, that you would just comfort them in this time of just total sadness, Lord. Heavenly Father, we just ask that you would watch over us this week, Lord, that you would give us the words and the wisdom to be your shining light, to be your words to others, Lord, to lift their day and to find that, hey, there's something different about us. What is it? And that we're able to tell them that it's you, Lord. We just ask that you'll bring us back safely next week. In your name we pray. Amen.
We are going to get started, so come on in, sit down, and well, we're going to try. I'm having trouble. There's a fan blowing. Hey, Bill, can you shut that fan off? Okay. Let's bow for a word of prayer, and we'll get started here. Our Father God, we thank you for the opportunity to come to you in prayer. Father, we ask a blessing upon your word today. Father, that we may incorporate it into our lives. And Father, we just thank you for what you've done for us. And we pray it all in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. We are looking at old paths. We're looking about going back, if you will, to the beginning. We talked about the Great Commission last week and how we are to go. And we mentioned that we're going to look at the church of the first century. And if we have time, if not, we're running about 5 minutes late as it is. And I'm awful windy. So we may have to put this in, but we want to take a look at the church in the first century, and then we're going to compare it to what we're doing now. And I think you're going to see a tremendous amount of change. I really appreciate how everything this morning in the first service has connected with what I'm going to say. Number one, we sang the Bill Gaither song, Because He Lives. Okay, that's important. Number two, Eric talked about the period in obituaries, and he died, period. Anything, as the world looks at it, there isn't anything that's left. It's done. To the Christian, as he mentioned, it's a comma. It is the end of the beginning, so to speak. We have the end, and it's a transition. When we look at the Scripture, and for me to give you all of the Scriptures at one time, we would be here until next year this time. In regard to what the church did, we know that Paul wrote some 13, 14 epistles, depending on who you think the author of Hebrews is. And in that, he addressed the majority of those to congregations, and he dealt with problems. The problems that we have with churches is that we get complacent for the most part. I want you to, I've got a homework assignment for you. I want you to go home and read the second and the third chapters of the book of Revelation. There's 7 churches that are mentioned, and it's an evaluation of those churches. And in some cases, it was good. There are 2 churches that they're just a minor little tweaks. And God complimented them on what they did. He complimented everyone with the exception of one, and that was the church at Laodicea. Total apathy. Think about and I'm going to do a flip right now. Think about our churches today. Yeah, we have people come on Sunday morning, and that's fine. And sometimes they come, sometimes they don't. Sometimes there's good reasons. Other times it's, Anyway, we want to go back to the beginning. And the book of Acts, the entire book, is dedicated to what the apostles did in the first century. Time-wise, if you're looking at the books in the New Testament, everybody guesses that maybe Matthew was the first written, and then somebody says, no, it was Mark, and you know, we've got these beautiful scholars that think they know, and we don't know. You've got the date that they normally will put Matthew or Mark at about 50 AD, about 20 years. They finally wrote it down. Now that's important because in those 20 years, they didn't have, go to the second chapter of Acts, that's where we're going to start anyway. But they didn't do that. They couldn't do that because it wasn't written. Those books were written probably, Paul, they presume, was executed about 67 AD. So some of that is the last. The Apostle John wrote his epistles, the Gospel, and the book of Revelation, and they figure that's someplace between 90 AD and 95 AD. Nobody knows. I mean, you know, we're taking educated guesses. The thing that is the most phenomenal about it, and we're going to start out with Acts chapter 2, verse 42, because this is probably the crux of everything that the modern church does. It's the pattern, quote unquote. Okay? Acts 2:42, and they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, the breaking of bread, and prayer. Now, we do all of that every Sunday morning. Okay? However, I want to mention two things that are important that the early church did, and we'll go with some passages. Number one, we always say that the early church preached the gospel. What is the gospel? Can anybody give me a quick definition? Okay, the good news. What is the good news? Say it louder. Death, burial, and resurrection. Now, if you look at that, and you look at the religions of the world, there may be someone who is martyred. Crying out loud, look at all of the Islamic people who, we just remembered. I almost said celebrated, and that's not the thing. There were some celebrations, but we remembered 9/11. It's been 18 years, and we remember every year on 9/11. There were 19 martyrs for Islam. They died, period. The death, burial, and resurrection. And this is the thing that I want to suggest to you this morning, that the resurrection is the focal point of the gospel. Jesus could have come and died and saved us from our sins. But on every day of the week in the city of Jerusalem, from the time that Solomon built the temple and prior to that with the tabernacle, they sacrificed animals for the remission of sins. There was a weird concept of it that it was not that you're absolved of sin, but you pushed it off, pushed it forward. Why was it pushed forward? The Apostle Paul says that Jesus died for our sins once for all. No more sacrifice. But you see, God didn't just want a sacrifice. It's important, don't get me wrong. But when Jesus rose from the dead, God raised him from the dead to kill death. Now that might sound stupid to say it that way, but to kill death. And we don't have to fear any longer. I can remember a number of years ago, state of Michigan has a convention of the Churches of Christ Christian Church every year. And I can remember there was a gentleman, I believe, I'm not sure, his first name was Jim and the last name has gone somewhere in that memory, and my recall button doesn't work a whole lot at this point. But I do remember him standing up for the keynote speaker, and he said, "I'm not going to die." And everybody was kind of, what? He said, "I'm not going to die." He said, "Yes, this temple that I live in at this point in time will fail me. But I am going to live forever." Church of the first century, and we've got a bunch of scriptures that we could go to, and we're just going to mention a couple. The message that was preached was totally different than what the Jewish religion taught. We have somebody who, number one, claims he was God. Number two, you crucified him. That's what Peter told him. You crucified him, but God raised him from the dead. God raised him from the dead. There is something different about this. It is the focal point of the gospel. Why would so many people, we've just finished a study on Jeremiah where Jeremiah says to the people, you need to repent. But God already foreknew that they weren't going to, and they lived their life not in accordance to God. Not 100%. There were some people who were faithful, but as a nation, they abandoned God. They didn't care. Apathy. Laodicea all over again, and maybe, I don't know. But you have this situation of, hey, I can go to the temple once a year. I can go here. If I've offended Rick, I can take my little turtle dove and I can go in here and give it to the priest, and he slits its throat and puts the blood of that on, and I'm absolved of my sin, and that's all there is to it, and so forth and so on. However, when the gospel of Jesus Christ was preached, there was a difference from the standpoint that there was a hope. And I'm saying it as we talk about hope, not the way the Bible talks about hope. There is a hope of something afterward. You talk to people today and say, hey, what's going to happen after you die? Well, a lot of people will say, well, I hope I go to heaven. Well, the biblical definition of hope is assurance. I am going to be with God. That point about it is the thing that makes the message so different. Now, how many sermons besides Easter have you heard on the resurrection per year? Maybe one or two, if you're lucky. but the disciples turned the world upside down within the first century, to the point that that's exactly what they said. The world was turned upside down because of what they preach. Now, I want to look at a couple of passages, and I've got them highlighted, and I've got to get my Bible up here because my bifocals don't focus down here. But it's easier for me to turn down there. In the second chapter, Paul's sermon on the day of Pentecost, and I'm just going to handpick a couple of these things to show you that. It says, "But he was a prophet and knew that God had promised him on an oath that he would place one of his descendants on the throne. Seeing what was ahead, he spoke of the resurrection of Christ, that he was not abandoned to the grave, nor did his body see decay. God has raised this Jesus to life, and we are all witnesses." Now, prior to that, he quotes a psalm in which David wrote that he would not let his precious one stay in the grave and decay. This is what Peter preached. He resurrected from the dead. In the third chapter, one of the sermons that Peter probably it was when they went to the temple and he healed the beggar and told him to. Peter said, "Silver or gold I do not have, but what I give you in the name of Jesus Christ, walk." And the guy got up, and there was a whole uproar. In his defense of doing that, this is what the statement: "You killed the author of life, but God raised him from the dead." In the fourth chapter, verse 2, "They were greatly disturbed," and this is the priest and the Sadducees. "They were greatly disturbed because the apostles were teaching people and proclaiming in Jesus the resurrection of the dead." It was a different message. It was a totally, totally different message. In verse 9, "And Peter, filled with the Holy Ghost, said to them, the rulers and elders of the people, if we are being called to account for the act of kindness shown to a cripple and asked how he was healed, then know this, you and all of the people of Israel, it is by the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, whom you crucified, but God raised from the dead, that this man stands before you." Can you imagine a cripple, and they're just raking these guys over the coals because they did this because they were preaching the dead. And here stands the guy who hadn't walked. He was a cripple, and now he's walking, and hey, look. And this is what is done within the life of people. We are crippled by sin. I know this is a stretch. We're crippled by sin, but God has saved us, and we are whole. Okay. How did the early church function? Well, the scripture tells us that they went daily, house to house, and they were teaching the word. They were also having meals together. They had all things in common. Communism. In today's society, they don't want to use that terminology, but they're talking about socialism. Well, it's not really what they had in the first century was, because if Jan needed something and I had it, I gave it to you. Why? Doug preached on that. It's because of the love of God, and they could see that by what God had done in the life of Jesus. And this was an explosion. In the 8th chapter, it says, on that day, a great persecution broke out against the church in Jerusalem, and all except the apostles were scattered throughout Judea and Samaria. Jews didn't like this message. It wasn't what they were apart. I know, granted, the Pharisees believed in the resurrection, but the majority of the other people, and they were more of the ruling class of the Sanhedrin, were Sadducees, and they didn't believe in the resurrection. So, man, they are taking the knife, not only stabbing them, but twisting the knife. And it's powerful, because anything before this hasn't been to this extent. Can you imagine, first of all, 12 apostles? Actually, if we start counting, we have 12, take away 1. 2 of them were selected to be the replacement for Judas. They cast lots and it fell on Justus. But in the qualifications of that, it was somebody who had been a follower of Jesus and had seen the resurrection. So now we have 11 plus 2. Now we have Paul. And then Paul, I think it's in Galatians, says that he was a person taken out of the time concept, but Jesus appeared to all of the apostles, some other people, and then to 500 people at one time. There were witnesses of the resurrection. Now, keep in mind that the resurrection was the focal point. Now, was it just the disciples that were doing, how many people can 12 people contact? There were 3,000 on the first day that responded to the message, positive, and just a few verses or a few chapters on, it had gotten to 5,000, and then they quit counting. And that was just the men. That wasn't women, children, or anything of that nature. And you're looking at this explosion, and all of a sudden, the Jewish people start to clamp down on this new sect. Fortunately, there was a gentleman that was in the Sanhedrin by the name of Gamaliel, and he says, hey, listen, before we start going out and killing people, because they're preaching this thing, be aware of the fact that there was 2 other people that had disciples, and they died, and it all went under. If we go out and make a big fuss about this, let's just sit back, it'll die out. Because Jesus is dead. At least the way he presumed it. But that wasn't true. The persecution came about, and the people were scattered. The apostles stayed in Jerusalem, but the people went out, and when they did, they preached the gospel. Now, I have looked this up, and there is a couple of Greek words that mean preaching. There is one particular word that means teaching, and in the scripture they're used almost interchangeably. So it doesn't mean that you have to be Doug, Bill, Sean. I guess you and I are 4 and 5, something like that on the list when it comes if there's a problem. And I do remember one Sunday about 2 or 3 years ago on Father's Day, I got a phone call at 5 o'clock in the morning from Annette. Sean was working at BP at the time, Bill was out of town, and Doug was throwing up and had the flu. And she said, "Can you preach this morning?" This is at 5 o'clock in the morning. I said, "Yeah, I'll do that." I hung the phone up, and Nancy says, "Who was that?" And I said, "Well, it was Annette. Doug's sick, and he wants me to preach this morning." And she says, "Well, what are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to go back and sleep for another hour." But those are the kind of things that we see this explosion. When they went house to house, do you suppose they just went house to house with those of like faith? Or did they go house to house because I want to go to Aunt Harriet's house for a meal? And when they did they talk about Jesus? Well, I think so. You see the point that I'm getting at? They were totally evangelistic. You look at Paul. That's what he did. But it wasn't only Paul. We have Stephen. I mean, he preached so violently they killed him. But he preached the resurrection. You look at Philip. In fact, that is in the 8th chapter. When this dispersion happened, he went to Samaria and was preaching in Samaria. The place that the Jews hated, that's where he went. Converted a guy that was a magician. And by all things that I've read, that particular person was not necessarily an illusionist like we have the magicians today, but they think he possibly had some help from Satan. And in doing so, and when he saw the gift of the Holy Spirit working, he wanted to buy it. Well, needless to say, and if you have an old Phillips translation, it's a real neat thing to see how how Phillips translate that when Peter confronted him. It would be like you would hear in any workplace or whatever. And it's accurate. Take a look at a guy by the name of Ananias. Do you know what Ananias did? What? No. No, that isn't the one that I'm thinking of. Too many things. But it was in Samaria. It was in Damascus, which is Syria today. That's where the gospel had spread to. He got this vision from from the Lord, and it says, "Hey, down in Damascus, there's a guy by the name of Paul. Do you know about him?" "Oh yeah, he's killing Christians." "Go talk to him." I don't want to. I don't want to do that. But go talk to him. And he went and he talked to Paul, who had an encounter with Jesus. He went to talk to him. Did Jesus save him? No. Ananias was the one that brought him the gospel. And I think it's in the 26th chapter of the book of Acts, when Paul is telling of his story of conversion. Ananias says, "Now, why do you tarry? Arise and be baptized and wash away your sins." There's another one. How about Cornelius? Oh man, Peter got slapped upside the head with that one. Hey, there's this Gentile. Well, we don't go to Gentiles. This is no way in the world. And he gets the vision of all of the unclean things that they weren't supposed to eat, and God says, "Kill and eat." I've never had any of that stuff. Crying out loud, I killed and eaten lobster is good. But you have this. But he had to be told 3 different times to go. And then when he went and he talked about Jesus, God did a miracle, if you will, and had the Holy Spirit come on Cornelius to show Peter, you're wrong. I hate to tell you this, but you're wrong. The gospel is for all people. We're not given all kinds of details, with the exception of some of the letters of Paul. Some of the difficulties. Crying out loud, the church in Corinth was the most mixed up, you name it, and they were doing it, and they were doing it wrong. Whether it was the gifts of the Holy Spirit, or whether it was accepting people the way they were and not caring. In the 5th chapter, hey, we got a guy living with his stepmother. And everybody knew about it and nobody cared. Paul said you should be in mourning because of the sin that he's in. And they look at it and they say, don't know. No other message in the entire world to that time got the kind of results as the people of the first century making disciples. The persecution. I had a world history teacher in high school, believe it. Of course, that's ancient history now, but in high school said the blood of the martyrs was the seed of the church. And we don't even think about that. You know, are we persecuted today? Oh yeah, we are. But nobody, at least right presently, is going around and killing people and having fun doing it in the Colosseum and things of this nature. And the people went because they knew they had resurrection. Now, I'm out of time, and I'm not even through the first page of my notes, people. If you want to look at one other passage, and we'll close with this one, and that's in 1 Corinthians 15, verses 12 through 17. And Paul gives somewhat of this idea. We're going to finish up with the modern day church and how the modern day church, if I could find 1 Corinthians, I'd be doing good. My trifocals are not working, people. Huh? Yeah, somebody tell me what page it's on. I had a friend for Christmas. He's a preacher. He's almost 80 years old now. He was a deputy sheriff in charge of the jail in Ingham County, and spent, I don't know, 25, 30 years, went to the Bible college on a program that was supposed to be 18 months, but because he lived right there, they extended it, and I think it took him 4 years part-time to get the degree. Phenomenal preacher, phenomenal guy, but he bought matching Bibles for he and his wife, and he'd get up there and he'd go like this. He says, will you turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Oh, Judy, it's on 1282. No, he would do that. Love these people. And fortunately, he's preaching in a little country church at this point in time in Michigan and has moved to Owasso. So we are going to, next time we're at Dan and Charities. All right. This is the closing thing that I want to say. And this is the 15th chapter of 1 Corinthians. Paul is talking about the resurrection all the way. But this is the thing. It says, but if it is preached that Christ has been raised from the dead, how can some of you say there is no resurrection of the dead? If there is no resurrection of the dead, then not even Christ has been raised. If Christ has not been raised, our preaching is useless, and so is our faith. More than that, we are found to be false witnesses about God, for we have testified about God that he raised Christ from the dead. If he did not raise him, in fact, the dead are not raised. For if the dead are not raised, then Christ has not been raised either. And if Christ has not been raised, our faith is futile, and you are still in your sins. That's how important the first century church treated the gospel. And they told everybody. Just one illustration. How many of you have heard a good joke this week? I don't care if it's on Facebook, whatever. You hear a good joke, and it's really a good one, and it makes you laugh. What's the first thing you do when you remember that joke? Tell somebody else about it, because you think it's funny, and you want to see their reaction. That's what the church in the first century did with Jesus Christ. They were so interested that they told everybody. All right? Next week, I'm sorry I took so long. I knew it was going to happen. I'm pulling a Doug. Part 2. Part 2, we're going to look at the modern, or the church of today, and how it is dealing with it. And we're going to look at subjects like church buildings, home churches. You guys, Gina and Nate said that you guys are going through the pagan church. I want you to come and share part of that with us in our discussion, because this will be a discussion type of thing. Today I gave you what the first century church did, and now I want to look at how we are handling it today. Are we handling it like a business? Do we look at what group we're targeting? I mean, we had a gentleman who is a good friend of mine who wrote a doctorate thesis on the millennials and how to reach them. And because his kids are millennials, they have targeted millennials at that congregation. We have a vast number and whatever. We'll talk more about it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I got to put all of this. How are you? Good.